Hello, Dr. Mashburn again. In this video, we're going to talk about things that we need in order for our bones to be healthy as we develop them and as we grow and repair our bones. So we're going to talk about several different factors that affect bone growth and bone health. So the first things we're going to talk about, or the three things we're going to focus on, are going to be your vitamins, hormones, and then physical stresses. So we're going to go through each one of these, give you some specific examples and some disorders that are associated with these types of factors. So the first vitamin we're going to talk about is vitamin D. And we've talked about vitamin D a lot. We've talked about how vitamin D is something that you need UV radiation to hit your skin so that your skin can start that process. Well, the reason we have vitamin D, or the reason we need vitamin D, is that vitamin D allows calcium to be absorbed in our small intestine. And we've talked about how we need calcium in order to be deposited in our bones to make our bones strong. So again, you've got to have vitamin D from either the sun hitting your skin to cause that cascade to begin to make vitamin D, or from your diet. Now, let's just think if you've ever thought of this before. Have you ever noticed that when you buy milk, it's calcium fortified vitamin D milk? So if you have milk with calcium, they're going to add vitamin D to it so that you can absorb it. You have to have the vitamin D in order to absorb the calcium. So many times you see calcium-rich food, you'll see that they've added vitamin D to the food in order for you to get the most calcium that you can out of the food. Now, if you have a disorder in vitamin D, you're not getting enough vitamin D in your diet, or you don't have the process is not converting vitamin D in your body using the sunlight, then it allows your body not to be able to absorb calcium very well. And so a disorder that is a result of not having enough vitamin D so that you can't get enough calcium absorbed into your small intestine is osteomalacia. And that means soft bones. And in children, we call it rickets. So this is a disorder in adults called osteomalacia, and children in rickets, where you don't have enough vitamin D, and so there's not enough calcium being absorbed in your small intestine, so there's not enough calcium to go into your bones, and you get soft bones because you're going to have to resorb the calcium from your bones to put it out into your system, so you'll have calcium for your muscles and nervous system. So again, vitamin D deficiencies are called osteomalacia or rickets. And this is a classic picture of a child that's suffering from rickets. The bones are soft, and then you have all the weight of the thorax and abdomen. It's kind of pushing down onto the pelvic girdle, pelvis, and then onto the legs and causing the legs to kind of bow out. So that's a typical view of what it would look like with a child who is suffering from rickets. Vitamin A and C. Vitamin A is necessary for your osteoclast to resorb minerals, and if you have too much vitamin A, that can cause weak bones. Vitamin C, we need that to make collagen. And if you remember, collagen gives strength to the bones, and you need that collagen. Then one of the things that we call, when you don't have enough vitamin C, that disorder is called scurvy. And so if you see someone with bleeding gums, that's a sign that they're not getting enough vitamin C, possibly, and possibly they don't have the collagen, and the teeth aren't held into the sockets very well, and you start getting bleeding gums. And so back in the days when we first realized about scurvy, we made the connection between vitamin C and scurvy. Sailors who were out to sea for many, many months, they would develop scurvy. Well, they realized if they would suck on limes or lemons or oranges and get vitamin C, that would help prevent the scurvy. So sailors back in the day were called limeys because they sucked on limes to try to prevent that scurvy. So if you start to have bleeding gums, think about, are you getting enough vitamin C? Your gums shouldn't bleed, and that may be a sign that you're not getting vitamin C. Vitamin C is also unique amongst many of the vitamins, is we can store a lot of the vitamins. So if you get some vitamin D or vitamin A in your diet, you can store that. Vitamin C is not really stored in our body, so we have to get a daily supply. So make sure you're getting your daily supply of vitamin C. All right, so that's the only vitamin. There's many vitamins that play a role in bone health, but that's just the three you've got to know for this class. So now let's talk about some hormones, and the first hormone we're going to talk about is growth hormone. And so we haven't covered endocrine yet. You'll do that in your next anatomy. But remember, the hormones are things that are produced by endocrine organs that's released into the blood the hormones travel through the blood to targets and cause some kind of an effect. And so the growth hormone is released from the pituitary gland, which is up in the brain. And growth hormone stimulates epiphyseal plate activity. So those epiphyseal plates of your long bones, growth hormone goes there and stimulates the chondrocytes to undergo mitosis. So the more the chondrocytes are dividing, the more cartilage you're getting, the template's getting bigger for you to lay down the bone later on. So you're growing those growth plates. So that's the job of the growth hormone. Now, if for some reason you have too much growth hormone as a child, that can result in something called pituitary gigantism. And this is a child that has suffered from that. I can't remember the age, but it's a young girl. She's not a mature female. She's in adolescence, and you can see she's pretty tall compared to the light fixture there. So that's called pituitary gigantism. Perhaps you have a pituitary tumor producing too much growth hormone, something like that. Maybe you don't have enough growth hormone. So not enough growth hormone during childhood can lead to pituitary dwarfism. And then here we have a picture of a child who is small in stature. So again, maybe the pituitary is not functioning well and you don't have enough growth hormone. Now, because of these two conditions, this is one of the reasons you see, if you've got children or if you remember for yourself, when they would take a graph and mark your growth throughout your childhood and adolescence, and they put you on a growth chart and see were you, at the normal height and weight for your age, or were you a little bit too short, maybe too thin, or maybe too tall, a little too overweight. So they were mapping your weight and your height on a growth chart. And one of the reasons they do that is because there is a normal range, and so if they start to see that someone is falling below the normal range or above the normal range, it may be a warning sign, okay, that something's going on. For example, they maybe have too much growth hormone. That's why they're too far above the growth chart, or they may be not having enough growth hormone, so they're falling too far below the growth chart. So it gives the doctors a chance to evaluate, are you growing normally? Do we need to investigate possibly some kind of a disorder and get that fixed in time for you to maintain a normal height and weight growth chart. So again, that's why they do that, is just see where you are and pick up any possible problems. Now, sometimes the pituitary kind of goes into hyperdrive as you get into an adult. Something goes wrong, maybe a tumor, something's causing your growth hormone to be produced too much as an adult. And if you get too much growth hormone as an adult, we call that acromegaly. And acromegaly is the bones are growing due to an overproduction of growth hormones. And you'll see that in the adult, in the jaw and in the hands. Those will continue to grow even through adulthood. So even though all your other epiphyseal plates have closed, the growth hormone can cause the jaw to get bigger and thicker and the hands to get bigger and thicker. So if you've liked the movie The Princess Bride, Andre the Giant, he suffered from acromegaly. That was why he had kind of a big face and big fingers. I think he was a pro wrestler. But anyway, so acromegaly is too much growth hormone in the adult. All right, some other hormones that play a role in bone development, thyroid hormone. And the thyroid hormone, we call that T3 and T4. That's an example of two of the hormones made by the thyroid. And they modulate, they kind of help out growth hormone because thyroid hormone, it plays a large role in regulating your metabolism. You've heard people say, oh, my metabolism's slow, I'm gaining weight, I don't have enough thyroid hormone, or I'm too thin, I've got too much. A lot of people want to blame their being too thin or too fat or whatever on their thyroid hormone. Sometimes that's the reason. Sometimes it's just you're not eating enough or you're eating too much. But thyroid hormone plays a role in regulating metabolism. And so when we talk about metabolism, what we're talking about is making energy. And so thyroid hormone helps us modulate and give us the required energy that we need for the growth hormone to allow our bones to grow. And it helps us control our skeletal proportions. So if you think about a growing teenage boy and they're hungry all the time, they need lots of fuel to grow all those muscles and bones. And so the thyroid hormone helps to modulate that growth hormone and provide the energy that you need to grow. And then last but not least, we have our sex hormones, testosterone in the male and estrogen in the female. And these are produced by the gonads, the testes and ovaries. and the adrenal cortex. So there's actually a part of your adrenal gland that makes these hormones as well. And the sex hormones are what masculinize and feminize the skeleton. And there's a separate video on that. And we'll talk about how the male skeleton's bigger, thicker than the female skeleton. And that's because of these hormones. If you look at a prepubescent boy and girl and look at their skeletons, they're going to look very, very similar. But once you go through puberty and estrogen and testosterone play their role, the skeletons will start to change. You'll see male skeletons get bigger and blockier. Again, there's another video on that. Sex hormones will cause the epiphyseal plates to close eventually. Estrogen actually closes the epiphyseal plates faster than testosterone, which is why females reach their height at an earlier age, around 18, whereas males continue to grow till about 21. And these hormones are the reason that we have our growth spurts. So when you go through puberty, the testes and ovaries are kicking in, they're starting to produce these hormones, and that's the time that you're going to start having your period and menstruation if you're a female, and body hair and acne and all these things that go with puberty, including your growth hormone, is because these good old sex hormones. All right, so that's the things that kind of to help us develop our growth, so modulate growth of the bones, but something has to be in charge of remodeling them, because remember, once we reach our adult height, the bones can still be reshaped and reformed and repaired and remodeled. So what is in charge of bone remodeling are hormones and mechanical and gravitational forces. So the hormones that play a role in remodeling the bones are the ones that play a role in maintaining calcium homeostasis. And I talked about this a little earlier, parathyroid hormone and calcitonin, so we're going to come back to that. And then also we're going to talk about how we can remodel our bones using outside forces like mechanical forces and gravitational forces. So let's talk about those hormones. Remember, we've got to have calcium in our blood. Again, we have a very elementary understanding that, oh, calcium's for strong bones. Well, yes, it is. But it's also necessary for our nervous system to work. Okay, we're going to talk about something called action potentials. We're going to talk about the electrical transmission through the nervous system. That requires calcium. We're going to talk about how muscles contract. One of the steps that involve muscle contraction require that you have calcium. For your blood to coagulate, so if you cut yourself and you're bleeding, for that blood to clot, to coagulate, you need calcium. Many of our glands and nerve cells, they won't function. They won't secrete what they need to secrete, like hormones or neurotransmitters, unless you have calcium. And it plays a role in cell division, so mitosis won't occur without calcium. So we have to maintain a really steady level of calcium that's in our blood. So we have to maintain a stable calcium concentration in our blood at all times. So the two hormones that play a role in this are calcitonin and parathyroid hormone. And calcitonin is made by the thyroid gland, and parathyroid from the parathyroid hormone is made from the parathyroid. So remember, if you look at the neck, there's this little butterfly-shaped organ right there. That's your thyroid gland, and on the back side, your parathyroid glands are embedded in the thyroid. So let's talk about these hormones and review, because I know I mentioned it earlier, so let's just go back over it, because negative feedback is something you guys probably need a little practice with understanding. So the first one is going to be the parathyroid hormone, and so the stimulus in this case is falling blood calcium levels, okay? So primarily, the hormone primarily in charge of blood calcium is parathyroid hormone. There are some studies, calcitonin plays a very minor role, but parathyroid hormone is your main hormone. And so the way this works is if blood calcium levels are falling, that's your stimulus, then you're going to have a receptor that's going to pick that up and realize, okay, the blood calcium levels are falling, and that's going to cause the parathyroid gland to release parathyroid hormone. Parathyroid hormone enters the blood, it goes to the bones, and it causes the osteoclasts to break down the bone, and which dissolve the bone, which releases calcium into the blood, which increases blood calcium levels, which is the opposite of falling blood calcium levels. So it's going to go back and shut off the original stimulus. Now blood calcium levels are coming up. We don't need any more parathyroid hormone. We've got our levels back where we need them to be. Okay? So the good old teeter-totter, just to make sure for you guys who kind of need another visual aid for this, we want to maintain our calcium level in our blood somewhere between 9 and 11 milligrams per 100 mLs. You don't have to memorize that. It's in your lab. If you ever take blood labs, it'll be there for you. So here's our stimulus. We have falling calcium levels. Our parathyroid hormone on the back of our thyroid gland is going to release parathyroid hormone. So our parathyroid gland will release parathyroid hormone, travel to the blood, to the bone, to the osteoclast. Osteoclast will then break down the bone and release calcium into the blood, raising blood calcium back up and shutting off this original stimulus. Okay, so that's what parathyroid hormone does. Now again, there is a hormone called calcitonin. It doesn't have a real important role in humans, but it does play a role, so we talk about it. And so calcitonin increases blood calcium levels, and it does this because there's particular cells called the parafollicular cells of the thyroid that release calcitonin. And so when blood calcium levels are too high, the thyroid releases calcitonin. Calcitonin travels through the blood to the bone, and the osteoblast will then pull calcium from the blood and put it into the bone, dropping blood calcium levels. Okay, so calcitonin, tone means tight or lower. So if someone's toned, their muscles are tight. So calcitonin, so if you think about tone, means to lower. It lowers blood calcium levels. That's its job. Parathyroid hormone increases calcium levels. So, just for example, let's just throw something out there. Let's just make up a scenario, and let's just say it's Super Bowl Sunday, and you had pizza and some cheese, and then you had a big old milkshake, a lot of dairy-rich foods. I'm just making something up. So you have too much calcium in your stomach. Now it's going down to your small intestine. You got plenty of vitamin D. You've taken all that calcium out of your small intestine. Now it's in your blood. Well, you'd like to save some of that, not get rid of it. So you would have calcitonin turn on and say, we got plenty of calcium in our blood. Let's pull that calcium out of the blood, take it into the bone, and thereby lower our blood calcium levels. Okay, so you kind of see how that works? Again, parathyroid hormone is the more important hormone, but we talk about calcitonin because we like to talk about positive and negative, how two things are antagonistic, how one causes blood calcium levels to rise and how one causes blood calcium levels to fall. So in most hormonal situations, we're going to talk about the one that causes one effect and one causes another effect. Like we'll talk about one causes blood pressure to go up and one causes blood pressure to go down. So you'll see that time and time again as you learn about anatomy and physiology. All right, so we've talked about vitamins, we've talked about hormones. Stress also can affect bone shape and bone remodeling. And we have physical stress factors. And so if you stress a bone, that's going to cause the bone to thicken or to respond by becoming stronger or reshaping. So bones are stronger. The more you put regular physical stress like exercise, that makes strong bones. So like running, that constant pounding of running, that will put stress on the bone and cause those bones to strengthen. If you're working out and you're causing your muscles to get bigger, which the word for bigger muscles is to hypertrophy. So say you're working out and your biceps are getting bigger and bigger, your biceps brachii are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and you're pulling on those bones. Remember that muscle has got to attach to the bone. And so you want a strong place for that muscle to attach to the bone. So as that muscle strengthens, the bone will respond by strengthening that attachment place and causing that bone to be stronger to hold up against that stronger muscle. You can also stress a bone using electrical stimulation. So if you've ever broken a bone or had a stress fracture, they may give you some electrodes to put on your body, which will send electrical impulses to the bone, and that'll actually cause the bone to heal and strengthen as well. So again, physical stress like exercise will cause your bones to strengthen. Now, when we talk about something called response to mechanical stress, there's something called Wolff's Law. And Wolff's Law tells us that a bone will grow and remodel in response to the force or demand that you put on it. Okay? So one of the things that they notice with Wolff's Law is imagine that you have a tennis player. And so you have a tennis player and the tennis player's right-handed and they're always whacking that ball. They're always using that right arm to do the tennis. And so if you were to look at their arms, you probably would notice that the muscles are a little bit bigger. The muscles on the right side are a little bit bigger than the muscles on the left side because they always use the same arm. Think about a person that bowls for sure, because they're always using the same arm when they hold the bowling ball. Well, as those muscles get bigger and they start to pull on those bones, the bones respond. And so you'll notice that in the tennis player or the bowler, if they're right-handed, the right bones will be bigger, will be denser. They'll be thicker than the bones on the left side. So we have handedness. So you'll see the bones will be bigger and stronger in one side than the other because of how you're using them. If you have a curved bone, it's going to be thickest where it's most likely to buckle. So if you have a bone that's like, say, your femur, it's kind of a funny shape. It kind of goes like that. And so imagine, you know, all the weight's pushing down, and so you're going to thicken the bone here so that it won't break. So if you have a curved bone, you're going to make it thick so that the curve's not your weakest part of the bone. Trabeculae, those little T's, they're going to form along those lines of stress. So remember, compact bone gives you the strength, but trabeculae can line up in areas of stress and further increase the strength of the bone. And again, like I've said earlier, anytime muscles are attaching to a bone, if those muscles get bigger, then the projections where those muscles attach are going to get bigger as well to provide strength for the muscle to hold on to the bone. So again, so Wolff's Law just tells us if someone is doing something on the left-hand side or the right-hand side, your muscle's going to respond to that. So don't be surprised if you play sports and all of a sudden you had an x-ray and of your left and right side, and say you play baseball or tennis or bowl, and you realize that your muscles and bone on the right side are bigger than on your left side. That's due to Wolff's Law. All right, and then the last thing I want to talk about is physical stress. We actually use the Wolff's Law, that way that bone responds to stress by reshaping and strengthening itself. We actually use that to our advantage medically. And so you can use ultrasound treatments. Remember, I told you about there's electrical stimulation, but you can also use ultrasound to stress the bone and cause the bone to treat a fracture. So if you have a fracture, they may put an ultrasound machine on you, and that sends ultrasound to that bone. It kind of stresses the bone, causes it to reshape and repair and become stronger. Orthodontics, and this is bone lengthening here, and this is the Chinese foot binding here. And if you don't know what Chinese foot binding is, you might want to go and read about that. They used to bind the feet of the Chinese women and cause them to form this little lotus shape, and it was considered attractive. But orthodontics, we all have that. When you wear braces, it's just stressing the bones, and you're moving your teeth and causing the alveolar processes in your mandible and your maxilla to reshape. So we stress that bone to allow it to reshape. So we use that to our advantage in medicine. And then, of course, gravitational forces. I put this in here just because I live near Huntsville, and NASA is pretty big here in Huntsville. And so what they learned about gravity is the longer you stay in space without gravity, astronauts would come back from space and they would lose bone mass. Gravity helps us to maintain bone mass, and so now astronauts that are on the space station up there for a long, long time, they really make sure they do exercises and try to stress those bones to counteract that lack of gravity in space, because we do need gravity. It's pulling down on us, and it's weight bearing. It causes our bones to remodel and to stay strong. So if you want to be an astronaut, one of the side effects of being in an anti-gravity environment for a long period of time is loss of bone mass. All right, so that's all I'm going to talk about now, and I will see you in another video. Thank you.